I greet you today in the name of Christ. Our youngest son's name is Matt, and some of you know him. He calls me Padre, and I have been in his life for 28 of his 32 years. Matt is married to Marianne, a lovely woman who we now claim as our daughter. Their first child, Layla, was born just about 6 months ago, and Layla is our fifth grandchild. Life has moved rather quickly for Matt, Marianne, and Layla. They finally were able to get an offer accepted on a home that they wanted to purchase. And if you aren't aware, the Seattle housing market is just nuts. And it's really tough to try to buy a house in Seattle right now. Well, they closed on their new home on Friday, and we helped move them into the new place yesterday. It was a long day, even though we had tons of help. Layla was exhilarated and energized by all of the people and the activity and the new surroundings. She had no desire to take a nap, and nor was she interested in her typical bedtime last night. After struggling with Layla for about an hour, Marianne finally announced, "I guess it's time for Dr. Sleep." Well, Dr. Sleep is a term of endearment that she uses for Matt because he has a unique gift for calming Layla and enticing her to sleep. So my husband, Mark, and I sat on the sofa and we watched Matt in the rocking chair carefully take Layla, position her just right, just the way she likes, move her arm to a certain location, rock her gently, and guide her thumb to her mouth. He spoke to her softly, and he radiated the most beautiful, strong, protective love. As we watched, I felt some energy near me, and I looked over to see Mark weeping silently but copiously. And when I inquired, Mark said, "Where did he learn to do this?" Well, Matt overheard this and he said, "I learned it by watching you and Padre." The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, which when sown in the ground is the smallest of all the seeds of the earth. And when it is sown, it grows up and it becomes the greatest of all shrubs, and it puts forth large branches so that the birds of the air can make nests in its shade. Jesus offers us two parables today about seeds, planting, growing, and living. And like most parables, they do not give us answers as much as they evoke new perspectives and they draw us into mystery. The parables present an invitation for us to participate in the growth and the spread of God's kingdom. And yes, we are called to be hardworking seed planters, but we are also called to be humble, grateful growth watchers. I think we are encouraged to let go of control and to find grace in the gradual unfolding of new life and growth in our midst. One huge point of today's gospel is that all of this happens independently of us. We don't do the work, God does. The growth of the seed seems almost automatic as we hear of a seed first sprouting, showing a stalk, then a head, and then a productive, full head of grain that can be harvested or replanted to yield totally new growth. And to me, this is how divine transformation happens. The emergence of the seed in its sequenced growth is like the kingdom of God in this sense. It grows mysteriously of its own accord, and it appears on God's timetable, not yours or mine. God's divine reign is apocalyptic and automatic and on a divine timetable, like the growth of a seed. But in Mark 4, the seed metaphors just keep on coming. We hear of the mustard seed, and mustard seeds have that beautiful quality of being small, but with the ability to spread and take over a field. In Mark's text, they are sprawling enough to include shade for all those genteel birds of heaven too. Along the way, the comparison to a mustard plant provides a little prophetic edginess, for powerful nations liked to compare themselves not to mustard bushes, but rather the impressive great cedar trees. The mustard seed decolonizes by comparison to the mighty cedars. The mustard plant is short, scruffy, and small, but it is also in Mark's sanctified imagination sprawling and sufficient for shade, just like the mysterious kingdom of God. This is where Mark's mysterious seed text meets us, and its vision of growth even more so if we are optimistic moderns. We may not be the apocalyptic people of the past looking for the end of time at every corner, around every corner, but we will gladly tag along for a little harvest joy with our seed. The image gives us hope in the seed's own automatic trajectory of growth. People like Theodore Parker, and the American transcendentalist and Unitarian minister, might well agree, even if his words and his images differ, because he wrote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." You've probably heard that before, because his words were quite influential and requoted by the likes of Abraham Lincoln, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and even Barack Obama. Whatever the kingdom of God is, it is indeed like a seed that grounds our hope that eventually things can change. It grounds our hope that eventually things can change. The moral universe has a bending arc to point you toward it. And that kind of hope can get you through some unbelievable difficulties. Okay, Mark, thank you for your hopeful and encouraging words. But our world today is so much more complicated. There is so much more division, hatred, unrest, and social malaise. What do first century agricultural images have to do with our contemporary situation? Well, Mark's words were written in an imperial context. The Roman occupiers in Palestine were just about to destroy the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Tensions were high, and Mark's world was filled with fear and social chaos. So maybe Mark is not so out of touch with our current realities. I believe that our present context poses the same questions for seedy eschatologies and kingdom hope, especially the Markan mustard bush variety. As I preach to you today, I am just so aware of the recent one-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. I hearken back to the court testimony of the sidewalk bystanders who witnessed Floyd's killing. Their accounts seemed to be so devoid of hope. In their cell phone videos, you too can see them. The EMT, the youth, the martial arts expert, the convenience store cashier, all lined up, pleading with the white police officer kneeling on a black man's neck to stop and to render assistance to George Floyd. As you watch their own videos, it seemed, even to the bystanders themselves, that all they could do from the sidewalk was to cry out and plead, but effect nothing. One teenager on the sidewalk even testified in court how she apologizes to George Floyd over and over again at night. She asks herself whether she could have done more. And why did her pleading or their yelling not suffice? Her haunting words make Jesus's mysterious parable hard to hear. What about Mark's seedy hope of an automatic kingdom of God that can survive her tearful testimony? And then came the verdict on April 20th. And as many have said, while justice did not come on that day, accountability did. And how did the lead prosecutor put it? He said, the bystanders were a bouquet of humanity. The bystanders were a bouquet of humanity. The very people who cried out helplessly from the sidewalk and made videos with smartphones were a surprise flowering of what it means to be human. The bystanders were not successful in saving George Floyd's life, but they were a mysterious, living, testifying bouquet of humanity. And in a moment, something of our view of Mark's seed parable changes. What it offers now is a glimpse of change, a germination that flowers right here on a cracked sidewalk at 38th and Chicago in Minneapolis. Now, that is mysterious and even a little revealing. Even so, there is one thing I now lay hold of. There may well be an arc of the moral universe that bends toward justice, but that modern view is for us both a promise and a goal. The famous quote from Theodore Parker uses the intransitive verb bend. But there is no one who says that we can't lay hold of that arc. And in the name of the promise, bend it just a little bit ourselves with a little transitive joy. For we, thanks to Mark, are people who even now glimpse germinating seeds yielding bouquets of humanity. A surprising, sudden, fragile yield of the kingdom's mysterious grace and justice.